The new rivers of America are complete, and while it seems like the largest amount of attention is being given to the Disneyland Railroad, really the best views of the updates are probably seen from the Mark Twain and the Columbia along the rivers of America. And in this episode of Fresh Baked, we'll be taking a side-by-side look at these new areas with views of the river from both before and after. Now, since there are new views on both sides of the river, we won't be doing one long side-by-side comparison. Instead, we'll be focusing only on the new scenes from both sides of the river. As such, we'll begin this comparison along the Davy Crockett Canoe Docks and the Hungry Bear Restaurant. And there's no change, of course, at the turnabout for Splash Mountain, and the Davy Crockett Canoe Dock is largely unchanged. You will notice that they've reinstalled Duke and his antics, which is obviously a very welcome thing. The changes you'll see at the docks are where they built these new stairs for exiting guests. This was done to accommodate the new path that we're about to see that runs parallel with the Hungry Bear. Previously, guests along the rail were right on top of the water. You could feed the ducks, but now there's about 15 feet of path between the restaurant and the water. I do miss being right on the water, but it's a fair trade for this beautiful path that will lead into Star Wars Land, thus eliminating that awful dead end that existed in Critter Country before. As we approach the extended seating area, this is where we really first begin to see the most dramatic changes in the skyline. Before, there were fully grown trees that hugged the track of the Disneyland Railroad. Now today, the skyline beyond the berm and park boundaries is quite a bit more visible, especially from the Mark Twain. This, of course, is unavoidable, as mentioned in the Disneyland Railroad comparison that we did last week, but as time goes by, those trees will grow in and fill much of that negative space. One of my favorite things to observe when riding on the Mark Twain or Columbia was the passing of a train. With this new arrangement, guests will get a much better view of that train, and it is really quite spectacular. So while we do miss the trees, we also have some brilliant scenes to witness, and they're going to stay brilliant even after the trees grow in. It will really be the best of both worlds. Here again, instead of trees, we get this beautifully staged presentation of Columbia Gorge. Our second chance at a really beautiful photo op with this bridge and waterfall scene. The Native American chief now appears a bit earlier than he used to, and I believe his two friends just out of frame below are the same two that used to appear on the port side of the Mark Twain as he passed Mike Fink's cabin. The old scene above it's much more green and appealing to the eye than the areas before it, and therefore I think it does challenge our new scenes today in terms of beauty, but I do think I still prefer the new scene at this stage. And here's our third bridge scene with a great shot of the Fantasmic storage facility behind the bridge and waterfall. And that beaver is quickly becoming a hit with guests. We'll segue now to the new Native American village scene. The new scene appears in a different place along the river than it did before, but I thought it better to compare the scene side by side with the old footage than to show them each in their natural order. It's worth noting that most felt, including myself, that the scene appeared to be a little less than it was before. The camp, for example, felt more cramped behind the rocks. But it does appear, though, in watching playback, that the totality of the scene is actually considerably longer if you include the shaman speaking to guests on that cliff face. And we'll stop there, as this is a point of discussion for some. The question is, why is he up there, separate from the rest of the village? And let's say, okay, we ignore that. Why isn't he at least facing them? Who's he talking to? I'm not sure I can answer the first question, but best as I can figure, that scene is for the train guests as much as it is for guests on the river. The train would not pick him up at all if he were not on that cliff face, which could then possibly explain why he's facing away from the village and toward the train, so that, he's speaking to the train guests. Having said that, though, it does seem awkward when viewed from the river. He's pretty much talking to himself. Personally, I'm okay with just letting it go altogether and just enjoying the new scene. You'll notice the young boy and his dog have moved. They used to appear about a minute or two before the village, and they were all by themselves. They have now joined the village, and I do feel like this is an improvement. So after looking at the playback and comparing the two scenes together, all in all, I really do enjoy this redone village quite a bit, and I feel like it is a more complete and convincing scene than it was before. Lastly, while not pictured in those trees past the village, was an eagle in a nest, and that eagle has also been relocated to the top of the rock cliffs near the shaman. It would appear to have also been plussed quite a bit, to my recollection. The eagle is more animated, as are his new baby eagles. We're now going to wind it back a bit so we can show you the port side of the boat and the now very different scenes involving Mike Fink's cabin. This used to be a longer stretch of island, but this section of the island was cropped off to give more room for Star Wars land. The island was cut off and the back end of the river and the train tracks moved in. The result is a shorter scene at the back of the river, but one that I still love quite a bit. The Gollywomper has been moved and is a little more separated from the cabin. The cabin has been moved as well. Where before it was set back amongst the trees a bit, it is now much closer to shore and aligning itself with the outcropping of rock, aka the fort. And it gives the cabin a much more prominent stance. It's high above the water now. In addition to being moved, it was actually completely rebuilt. And it's not a replica either, it's an entirely new cabin. It appears stronger and sturdier now. The old cabin looking more like a shack in comparison. Now, I've heard rumors that the interior of the cabin is fully finished as well, not just a facade as the old cabin was for the most part. And by fully finished, I mean one could live in it. I remember doing this look back from previous trips, so I decided to recreate that shot here for your viewing pleasure, and I think it works out pretty well. Now, before we dock, let's go back to the beginning to see how the front of the island has changed. The new scene involving Lafitte's Tavern looks quite a bit busier to me. They've added this boat, and this was done, I think, to obscure tech needed for Phantasmic. Lafitte's Tavern was completely repainted, where it was just a sort of plain wood brown type color. It is now a mix of green and red. And as we head back to dock, we'll note that these scenes along the river appear unchanged, and therefore will conclude our side-by-side comparison of the new Rivers of America. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment below with your thoughts on the new scenes, likes and dislikes. Did I miss anything new or removed? We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and until next time, fresh bite!